Oh, so it's Friday. You know what that means. Or wait, actually you don't. This is actually the first video. This is 5-Minute Friday, and we're going to talk about different shutter speeds for video coming up next. Hey, good to see you, man. How you been? Well, today is the first 5-Minute Friday. What does that mean? Basically, every Friday, I'm going to try and put out a video in which I give you some sort of camera tip, basic trick, something of that nature that's going to help you improve your video quality. Today, we're talking about camera basics. We're talking about shutter speed. So we got 5 minutes. Let's put it on the clock. Let's go ahead, get started, and try and do this in 5 minutes or less. What is shutter speed? Well, you're shooting video. Shutter speed is the speed at which the shutter opens and closes and gives you that filmic look. If the shutter was open all the time, you would just get nothing but blurs. And if the shutter is too fast, it's gonna look way too sharp. So again, if you leave the shutter open too long, it's gonna give you a really blurry image. Like this is all gonna blur. If the shutter is too fast, then it's gonna look too sharp. Let me give an example. Right now, I'm shooting at 24 frames per second. The correct shutter speed is 1/50th. We'll talk about why in a minute. So let's go ahead and slow this down to 1/25. Let's see what happens here. All right, so first off, we are way more overexposed. But also, you notice what happens here? You see a lot more blur. Now, let's slow it down even more. Let's go down to 1/13th of a second. Now we're in like a dreamy, maybe fight sequence or something of that nature. All right, so now we're back at 1/50, back to the proper shutter speed. Let's go ahead, speed things up. Let's go to 1/100. Actually, we're gonna go 1/60. Now, of course, it's a little bit darker. All right, so it's a little bit darker, but you get the idea. Now when I move, see how sharp it is? It's really sharp. It's really weird. So you don't want to do that. So let's go ahead and go back to normal camera settings. So why is shutter important? Because it gives you that natural look like you normally get when you're looking at something. So you don't want your shutter speed to be all wonky. Let's talk about the 180 rule. The 180 rule is where your shutter is double your frame rate. So for example, I'm shooting at 24 frames per second. I got my shutter at 1/50. Now I can't go to 1/48, but I can go to 1/50. That basically means that the shutter is going to open and close and give you the proper amount of no motion blur. This looks normal. When you shoot in higher frame rates, like for example, 60p, you want to be at like 1/20, or if your camera doesn't do 1/20, most cameras do 1/25. And if you're shooting at 120p, you want to be at 1/240 or 1/250, which is what my Sony camera does. If you're shooting at something crazy like a 240 frame rate, now you want your shutter speed to be like 1/480 or 1/500. Cranking that up, you're going to need a lot of light to make that image look good though. So shutter speed does differ from stills. Now with shutter speed, like I said, you want that 180 rule, so you want it to be double your frame rate. So if you're shooting 30 frames per second, you want it at 1/60th. Again, if you're shooting at 24 frames per second, you want to shoot at 1/50. But how's that different than stills? Well, in stills, the faster the shutter speed, like for example, 1/250, that's going to freeze motion. So if you don't want blur, you want to shoot at a higher shutter speed. In video, you want that 180 rule to help make your image look great, look crisp, look sharp. How do you freeze images in stills? Shoot at a higher shutter speed. 1/200, 1/250, 1/500. That's going to freeze that motion. But in video, you want that motion to look normal. And that's where the 180 rule comes in play. So if you have any questions or concerns regarding shutter speed, go ahead, leave those down in the comments below. This has been the first 5-Minute Friday. I'll go ahead, link up additional ones on the screen right now. Before you leave, don't forget to like, subscribe, ring the bell. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.